So a question that I've seen a lot on Google Trends and stuff like that is, are a veteran's records public?
They're not public records. The records are actually legally maintained by the branch of the military that created the record. We act as an agent for the military departments in managing those records, keeping them in the proper environment so that they can be preserved, and making them available to veterans and other requesters who come in. There's two legal requirements that come into play. There's the Privacy Act, which means that if you're a veteran, we have to maintain your privacy. There's also the Freedom of Information Act, which means that we have to release things that may be about your military service, but would not be considered to be an invasion of your privacy. So the records are not public, but they could be requested by a third party. We could release certain data elements that the military departments would not consider to be an invasion of your privacy. However, the records at some point in time will be accessioned by the National Archives and Records Administration, and at that time they would become public records. That occurs 62 years after your obligation, your military service obligation has ended.
And why is it 62 years?
So this will take a second to get through, but most records created by the federal government are temporary records. I mean, someday they will be destroyed. You file your tax returns, 7 years, 6 months later, they will be destroyed. Military service records are elite in the sense that they're among that very small percentage of 2 to 3% of federal records that are created that will be kept for the life of the Republic. Once a series of records is scheduled to be kept permanently, the next thing that has to happen is you have to determine when they will legally shift from the owner of the record, the agency that created the record, to the National Archives. In this case, a survey was conducted. We asked veterans for the purpose, why they were asking for their records. And we collaborated with the military departments in conducting that survey. And we found that on average, 62 years after your obligation ends, the purpose of that request changes. It changes from a primary need, like an entitlement for a benefit, to a secondary need, like it's a genealogy request or a mortality study or something like that. So with the military service records, after each veteran service obligation has ended, 62 years after that service obligation has ended, that's when the record legally becomes owned by the National Archives, and that's when it becomes a public record.
Interesting. So even if an individual was looking for records of someone who is currently serving in the military, they wouldn't even reach out to you guys for that. They would reach out to the proper DoD channel. But for someone that is no longer serving in the military, then they might look to you to get those documents.
That's correct. So if you're still serving, then it's your personnel command that would maintain that record. And even after you get out, because the records are electronically maintained today, and those systems are maintained by the military departments, not by the National Archives, your personnel command still has access to those records. But by coming to NPRC, it sort of provides one-stop shopping for those records. And our staff can access those electronic systems that are maintained by the military departments to recall those records.
So if I left the service in 2010, then the National Archives isn't going to really have total control of my records till 2072.
That's when the National Archives will legally own your record.
Own your record, right? Before then,
we won't even have, because you used the year 2010, we won't even have a physical copy because it won't be an analog record. It'll be a digital record maintained by the service branch in which you served. If you write to us for your record, we're going to access those systems, download the record, and either transmit it to you electronically or print it and send it to you a hard copy. That's what you need.
Okay.
Connect with the benefits you earned and deserve. Visit news.va.gov for current events, sign up for the Vet Resources e-newsletter, subscribe on YouTube for content like the SITREP and VR5, or follow VA on social media. Visit the video description below and get connected today.